All right, last week we left off with Judah actually living up to his word, standing there before Joseph and saying, look, I made a promise to my dad, and I'm going to keep it. Take me instead. Take me instead. And then we had to stop right there. But that's okay, because this is where we needed to kind of start this week anyway. This is the very next chapter. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him. And he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. In other words, he couldn't stand it anymore. He'd been keeping up this farce for way too long, and he just couldn't hold it in anymore. I think he did well to keep it up as long as he did. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. Now, they weren't even in the same room. It says he sent them out. Wow, he was boo-hooing. He was boo-hooing. And we said last week when we saw him break down, it's good to know it's not just a woman thing, you know.
Yes, amen.
He wept aloud to the point where everybody in the house could hear him. That's some crying. I cry like that. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? Notice this, and his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. You talk about the shock of a lifetime. I mean, for how many years now have they presumed that he was dead? They've been talking with him on and off for a couple of years now as this ruler of the house of Pharaoh, and now he comes out and says, I'm Joseph. And I'm thinking he's probably speaking in Hebrew at this point.
Oh.
Not in his, because he sent everybody out, so I'm guessing he sent the interpreter out too. And surprise, I'm Joseph.
And no,
Yeah.
he's a slave at least, if he's not dead.
They were troubled at his presence to the point where they could not speak. They were dumbfounded, literally.
They're just probably looking at each other, going, "How can this be?" Not
Yeah.
able to say anything, just looking at each other.
Mm-hmm. I think, like I said, they were shocked and very afraid. They know what they did to Joseph. They know what position Joseph is in now. What could Joseph do to him? Anything he wanted.
For him to be crying, though, what would that take with their mind?
They were probably thinking something's really wrong because he's a ruler and he's crying.
Mm-hmm.
And then say somebody in authority and they're just like...
And they're just boo-hooing.
like,
He's probably thinking the big guy's going to kill us all, and he's crying.
Yeah. When the person in charge loses it, that does usually kind of make the rest of everybody go, okay, you know. So
I think you saw that love. I think
could, but at that point, did they know who he was? So, you know, it was hard to say what they were.
His presence.
They were just troubled, you know. I don't think they knew what to think, to tell you that. I don't think they knew what to think or what to feel. They ever been there? How do I feel about this? And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Just in case you didn't understand. Let me refresh your memory. I'm Joseph, you know, the one that you sold. That's me.
Well, he's confirming because no one else knew.
Yeah, I don't know.
Confirming, you sold me, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't know that.
That's true. It could have been that, you know, how else would I have known? That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very
It's
true.
Confirming, yes, I am who I say I am because you sold me, and how would I know that?
Yeah, confirming and also reminding, I haven't forgotten what you did to me.
Well, and,
You know.
I mean, he's grieved,
And
he wants them to believe who he is.
yeah, I think that's probably more the case. Yeah, just let me prove it to you. But I love the repetition, you know, just in case, you know. But look what he says here. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. Don't be angry with yourselves. This was all God's doing. That takes integrity. To go through what he's been through, all this, I mean, basically all his life.
Yeah. Until he
At least all his adult life, you know, to go through what he's been through and yet say, it's okay, don't be upset with yourselves.
what's amazing is there is no root of bitterness there.
No,
And I'm sure why God was able to use him.
because a bitter heart can't say, this was God that did this. A bitter heart says, why did God do this? You know?
A long time ago, a lady, an older lady who's been a Christian a long time, a pastor's wife, was saying to me, just, if people realize what the root of bitterness will do to their life, it's a miserable life. And she said that's what we really need to be careful of, is that root of bitterness is so hard because, roots go so deep.
Oh, yes.
Tree roots go so deep into the ground, and when there's a root of bitterness,
And that seed can get in there unnoticed because the seed is small.
there's a lot of things, we've said have happened to us growing up that, a lot of it we don't even talk about, but,
You don't want to dwell on it.
she's still our mom, and
Yeah.
she's still our dad, and, you love them no matter what. It's just, it's easier said than done when you don't have,
When-
have that bitterness there.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think
That's-
there's no
yeah.
bitterness, because you could have very easily been bitter.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I mean, after all of that, sure, you know.
his trust is that God has been with him the whole time, and he's had that comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And he was wise enough to see God's hand in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think Joseph was so thankful.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that God used his brothers
Mm-hmm.
in what God did.
Mm-hmm.
Satan meant it for evil, and God meant it for good.
Mm-hmm. He continues telling them, for these 2 years hath the famine been in the land. So it's only been 2 years of famine.
Oh, wow, it's got 7.
And yet there are 5 years in the which there will be neither earing nor harvest. So, I mean, you think all this has transpired, and it's only 2 years into it. God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Who would have ever guessed that when the brothers were doing that, they were saving their own lives? It confounds the brain. I mean, we don't see God's plan.
And that his speech as a young man, telling his brothers that they were going to bow to him and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph didn't know that was God's.
We just have to trust. So now it was, yeah. Why do you think I picked that song this morning? So now it was not you that sent me hither. You didn't do this, but God. God did this. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. In other words, I'm not suffering for it either. Joseph made out pretty good through this deal. Now, yes, he had to suffer along the way, but think about it. If he hadn't gone through what he'd been through, where would Joseph have been right now? A shepherd. He would have been a shepherd, just like all his brothers. Just like all the brothers. He would have been starving, like the brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
He would have been exactly where they were. But now look where he is. I mean, he's in comfort.
He was there in the good 7 years.
Hmm. He was there for the good 7 years, and he's been in comfort. Yeah, it took some trials to get there, but he's better off for it.
Well, you stop and think about the 2 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
He learned the language.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So
And being in Potiphar's house and everything. Yeah, I mean, God, like I said, God had every little step planned out, even though it didn't make any sense to anybody looking at it.
no, we couldn't have.
You know, it makes sense to us because we see the whole story.
Oh, of course.
But it didn't make sense to Joseph because he was actually living it real time, you know. Just like our stories, sometimes they just don't make sense. And that's why these stories are here. To say, remember Joseph? You know, preacher said it a few weeks ago. Remember Joseph? I was like, yeah, I remember Joseph. We remember him. But this is what it's teaching us. Have faith, trust and obey, even when it doesn't make sense and we don't see what's happening. You sang the song, The Greater Yes. You know, it doesn't make sense, but look what God's doing. So Joseph reveals himself, and we're going to kind of skip a little bit because there's a couple of chapters of other stuff, but he reveals himself. He says, go home and get Dad. Bring him back here. We've got room. We've got a good place to stay. You know, you don't have to live there anymore. You don't have to starve anymore, you know, or make this trip back and forth. Just, y'all come live with me, you know. And they went home and got Jacob, and can you imagine telling that story? Yeah, Dad, by the way, remember, what happened when, we found that coat? Well, we kind of really didn't find the coat. We kind of placed the coat. Yeah. Can you imagine having to tell that story? Ooh, I wouldn't want to tell that story. If you've carried a lie for that long. Yeah, but the good news is, before you can say anything, but the good news is, yeah, just trying to take it in. But he accepts their word. He goes and sees, and sure enough, there's Joseph. Happy reunion. Joseph introduces him to Pharaoh. Wow. I mean, to meet somebody of that importance, He meets the Pharaoh. They find him a house and land, and everybody's good. Yeah, everybody is good to go. Jacob blesses the family. He blesses Joseph's sons, and then he's on his deathbed. And he has some things to say to each of his children. And that's a harsh chapter to read, so I'll kind of let you read that on your own. I think it's 47 or 48. That's a tough chapter, but he has a few things to say to his sons about things that he's not pleased with, that they need to get their act together. And then he passes away. And I don't know how much time transgressed from the time he actually moved to Egypt to the time he passed away. But it's just those are kind of the order of events. And that takes us up to the last chapter of Genesis. Jacob passes away, and the brothers say, uh-oh. Joseph's probably been nice to us all this time because of Daddy. What's he going to do now that Daddy's gone? He didn't want to break Daddy's heart. He didn't want to throw us in jail or whatever because he knew it would hurt Daddy. But Daddy's not here anymore. So what's Joseph going to do to us now? See, they didn't realize just how much Joseph had changed. They didn't realize just how much God had worked in Joseph's life. So they come and they bow before him and say, we're your servants, we'll do whatever you ask, Bowing before him again. Again. Yeah. And Joseph said unto them, fear not, for am I in the place of God? Who am I to punish you? Who am I to judge you? God meant this. God did this. So who am I to complain about it? Ooh, that hurts me even to say it. Who am I to complain about it? God, I don't like this. Tough. It's for your good. I always think of my dogs. To care for the dogs, sometimes you have to trim the toenails. They hate that. You'd think you were killing them. They're, and they're pulling and hauling. And I'm going, but this is for your good. To spray them for their flea spray, they don't like that. It doesn't feel good. To give them a bath, they don't like that. They fuss. Yeah, they fuss and they fight and they complain and they whine and cry. And all the while I'm going, stop acting like I'm hurting you. This is for your good. And then I get that heavenly thump across my head. Child, why don't you get that? You get it for them. Why don't you get it for you? Stop whining and crying. This is for your good. Joseph said, I'm not in the place of God. If this is what God's doing, I can't complain about it. Wow. But as for you, here it comes. Ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, look at this, to save much people alive. How many people would have perished if Joseph hadn't been where he was, when he was? If he hadn't been there to interpret the dream, if he hadn't been there to gather up all the food. I mean, this was throughout all the land. Yeah, this was through the whole land. How many people would have died and perished because of that?
And God softened Pharaoh's heart to understand what Joseph was saying.
To allow it to be done. To make him the ruler. Look what Joseph came out better. Joseph's brothers came out better. The whole land came out better. God wasn't saying, this is just for you. This is for everybody. It's all for good. Doesn't the Bible say all things work together for good? It doesn't say all things are good. It says all things work together for good. There is no greater picture, I don't think, in the Bible than this right here. All things work together for good in the end. Especially if we have the heart and attitude of Joseph. We don't have that root of bitterness. And we can see God meant this for good. God is doing something with this. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. I feel that way about object lessons. Maybe that's because I taught kindergarten for 9 years. I don't know. They see things and it sticks. So I thought, okay, we need to see something to get this to stick. Hearing it's good. Seeing the verses is great. Let's see if we can drive it just that little bit deeper. So I've got a little thing for you. That's the candle. It's smooth. It's shiny. It's nice. That's what Joseph was like to begin with. And if you want, you can pass that around. Just kind of let everybody kind of pass it back to here. Just let everybody see. It's not a scented candle. It's just a candle. But it's just, see how, it's like it's flawless. It's just nice and smooth. It's good to look at. That was Joseph at the beginning. That was us at the beginning. Nice. Smooth. Good. Remember at the very beginning of Joseph's story how good everything was going? He was a favorite. He was wealthy. He didn't lack anything, you know? Good. This is where he was. But God can't use this vessel. This vessel has to have some work done. The Bible talks about God being a potter, how he molds the clay. Sometimes he has to mold it, start over again, you know. This is not a usable vessel, and I'll show you why in just a few minutes. To be usable, we have to be broken. Sometimes, many times. And you say, well, that can't be for good because that's ugly. And you can pass that around so you can just see how yucky that looks. It's cracked. It's broken. It's pieced together. And you say, how can that be for good? See, when Joseph looked at his circumstances to begin with, that's what he saw. All those cracks. All that brokenness. He saw the holes that it left. You know? Sometimes when we look at our situations, that's what we see. You say, Lord, I'm shattered. How can you use me now? This looks so much more usable than this. But if you would go ahead and get the lights for us, and you can just leave them off and just come back here, I'll show you that this is a much more usable vessel. Much more. Because it has been broken. And the more it's broken, the more usable it will become. And I'll show you why. Can you see the light? Mm-mm. But now look at this one. Can you see it now? The more it's broken and the more it cracks, the more it shatters, the more of that exterior that chips away. Our pride, our selfishness, our self-centeredness is all about me, you know. The more of that God breaks and chips away, the more of his light will shine through. See, his light's in us all along. When we're saved, we get that light. See, there's the light. It's there, and if I turn it, you can see it's there. But those looking on the outside can't see it until we're broken and shattered. We go through those hard times, and each of those hard times, if we don't grow bitter, that's the key.
Yeah.
If we don't grow bitter, if we see it like Joseph saw, this looks like evil, but God meant it for good. Then each time we'll chip away a little bit more, and a little bit more, And that light inside of us will shine brighter and brighter and brighter. And when we're looking at us, we may not see it. But God sees it. And you know what? So do others. Other people who are looking at you and going, how do they get through that and keep that attitude? Or just see us going through something and say, I see God all over that person. You ever saw somebody like that? Have you ever seen somebody like that? Just, you look at them and you just see, it's like Jesus is just pouring out of them. I've seen people like that. And usually when they're going through horrible times. And I think, how in the world? They had to be broken. They had to be broken first. One more verse before we go. This is in Psalm 51. I didn't hit the button. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. A broken and a contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise. It's not that God wants to break us, to hurt us. God wants to break us so he can use us. Because his ultimate goal is to make us more like him. Well, he is the light, right? That can never be the light. Because it won't let the light through. This one can. But only if it's broken. Is that awesome or what? Isn't that awesome? God is so good. So the next time you're going through a hard time, and we all go through them, keep Joseph's attitude. Keep this in mind and say, well, I'm just adding another crack. That's okay. That's okay, because that's just one more place Jesus can shine through my life. It's not an easy attitude to keep, but it's essential. And it's a Christ-like attitude to keep. It's a Joseph attitude to keep. One more crack, it's not going to hurt me. It's just going to make me shine brighter.